Everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. My name is Hector. Today I'm joined by Luis Serrano of Rooted Chronicles and Samson the Nazarite. And, had the privilege of meeting Luis back in 2019.
Yeah, before COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID. The
Like
last San Diego,
summertime.
the last San
Yeah.
Diego before COVID, and we got to be on a panel together. And it was weird. I was like, I'm up here with you who made this cool comic book and Cirillo with the action Bible and all this stuff, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
I wrote some Bible studies. So it's not quite the same stuff, but also still super cool to be able to be a part of it in that capacity. And
Yeah.
it was really good to meet you then, and we've been in touch. We worked together with CCAS on doing some Marvel reviews and discussions and stuff like that. It's been a good experience. So, but honestly, I have to say, because there's a lot of books and stuff out there. I don't know that I was familiar with Rooted before meeting you. Um,
Mhm.
and that's like, no, not y'all do bad press or anything. I just hadn't met anybody. Um, but so why don't you tell me first off, tell me about Rooted and what your role is with
Yeah.
Rooted.
Yeah, so, our self-publishing arm is Rooted Chronicles. Um, Came up with that since our stories are rooted in the scriptures and the Bible stories. So those are kind of the stories we tell, through that publishing arm.
Oh,
Um, and you're right, like, you shouldn't have heard of us, like, um Uh, I have a day job. I have 3 kids, married, 3 kids, volunteer, church, so, like, the little bit of time I do have, we would work on the book.
and you do have a day
And
job. You have a day job that actually requires you to be functional and working at your day job too.
right,
So,
right,
you know,
absolutely.
it's not like a
So,
fake job like a pastor where I can just take all my time and write.
that's right. Like, I work fluctuates, so yeah, so we wanted to tell the whole story of Samson. And starting out, people were basically like, you got to make it yourself. Like, don't try to get a publisher to do it. So we were like, all right, well, let's do that. So they were like, don't even make a comic. You need to make a graphic novel. Right. So we were like, all right, what if we make like a large, like a small graphic novel, almost like a little bit over 2 comics, right? So we did volume 1, which was like 72 pages. So that's what everybody kind of, if you've seen our book, the thin one of Samson, that's volume 1. Um, and we don't, like I said, I was busy and people are like, you should market and advertise. I'm like, I don't have any time for that. I was like, we're just going to try to finish it. Um, and then we'll kind of focus on now it's done, right? So, because the story, like, you're kind of breaking up the story, right? I like to read graphic novels straight through. I'll read comics through, but like, we didn't come out with them fast enough for that.
And I've not met a self-published comic book that has met like their own deadlines or own pacing that they want.
Mm,
I've not met a single comic book publisher from Christian or otherwise that has kept up their
yeah.
own pace. And I wrote a comic a year ago and gave it to an artist to work on in between his commissions, his day job, and everything else. Like, I'd say he's halfway through the first
Yeah.
single issue.
Hmm.
And but the thing is, we're trying to pitch this to a studio that would actually hire us to do it. But I'm like, bro, if you work at this pace, we're gonna get fired. I was like, it's one thing. I was like, and I know from your place of writing takes a lot less like time
Right.
constraint than
Absolutely.
the art end,
Absolutely.
but so like how so you said that you weren't putting them out fast enough to be like single issues, or you couldn't get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. And so when we started out, we said, it's exactly what you said. You have to get on the artist's schedule, right? You can be like, hey, you guys ready to do art? They're like, we're not ready. Well, maybe in 6 months we can start doing stuff. And on top of that, I was always of the mindset of like, hey, I want you to do your best work. and I don't want to rush you. Like, we're not in a rush. We don't have a deadline to meet. So like, let's try to make it high quality, right? Like, I'd rather you take your time, make it high quality, and we put out something that will last. So, and then also like, I don't have money for pages, right? Like, we did volume one. It's like, okay, let's take a break. We did volume two a few years later. So again, you're paying a whole bunch of people, right? And I was kicking myself going to cons, seeing how many prints would sell. And I'm like, you know how much a comic book costs versus like a one piece of art print that you can just keep reselling for more than a comic book? It's like
Right.
$20 a print. And I'm like, you want to buy 72 pages for $10?
And people be like, no. And
No.
and
$50 for a print.
$50. And dude, I've got friends that'll charge that. And like, it's, I did prints at my booth for a while. I had an artist that was like my partner at cons, and so I would write. He would sit at the booth and sell prints, and he would do like little $5 sketch commissions and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
it's like people will be like, "Ooh, reading? No, that's pretty." And it occurred to me yesterday. I was walking with my daughter and thinking about just book pricing and stuff, and I don't know why, but it made me realize I spend more on comic books per month than I do on all my streaming subscriptions.
Wow.
And I'm like, and I complain about my streaming subscriptions. Like, this is too much.
It's too much.
How dare I pay like Peacock $5 for 6 months of entertainment when I paid $5 for a mediocre run of Detective Comics? And
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Wow. That's
I was like,
different.
that's different.
Yeah.
But like,
I love we
so
definitely have a books budget in our budget. Like, my wife's like, "What you buying more comics?" I'm like, "Hey, we got a budget for these."
I don't know that I've really functioned with that. All I know is I've got to do a comics podcast every 2 weeks, and I got to have something to talk about. And
That's
I'll be
all
like,
right. Hey, this is work.
I was like, I'll look at what I've pulled in and be like, none of these were good. I got to buy more.
That's right. What am I gonna talk about?
Yeah, it's like this wasn't good enough. But no, but that's the thing. Like the amount of work that goes into a print or a piece of art, visual art at a con versus how much each comic book artist is
Mhm.
like going through
Yeah.
because I wrote for a comic book year and a half ago and it took the dude a year to put out the next issue and I was like
Mhm.
that was a long time. And like,
Yeah.
or I wrote for his issue and I only wrote 4 pages, but then it took 6 months for that to come out. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
a long process. I don't like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, actually, I don't know if you saw today, we posted that, like, um, we're gonna be launching the graphic novel on Kickstarter,
yeah.
but, unlike all the other Kickstarters that I've ever been part of, like, we've got the books ready. They're at my house. So, like, once the campaign's over, we're gonna send them out. Like, you don't have to wait however long. Because, like you said, the creative process is just a lot of times, I mean, unless you're the machine pumping it out, like, it's not gonna be rushed.
And that's one of the things I've enjoyed about, being my own, self-publishing in that own capacity is like I can write at my own pace, but outside of waiting a couple months for editing, like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have to wait on anybody else.
Yeah. Well, but to see that's funny because I even heard uh Brian Michael Bendis talking about this. He was like the best thing in comics is like writing a page, and then when like the pencils or the art comes in for the page, and it just blows you away, and you're like, I love doing this. This is so much fun.
And that has been really neat because like so like I don't know if I've even ever posted them for real, but for the comic that I suggest or like wrote, it's just about awkward stories growing up in church. And it's gonna kind of be like an anthology series of
Nice,
that. Like so
nice.
the first issue is about like a kid going to youth group and a lock-in just trying to like score points with some cute girl in high school and
Yeah,
like all the
nice.
awkwardness that entails from that. And I'm like, I drew like stick bubble figures and wrote my text and sent it to my writer, and I'll get these pages. I was like, "Oh, that's pretty."
Yeah,
It's like he put more detail in one page than I put into like the entire writing process, and I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay, never mind." Um,
yeah.
so in the creation process, like Samson was the first rooted story. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we wanted, like, once I was like, hey, let's tell these stories, and I think comic book format is the best way. I mean, animation would be awesome, but that's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm like, who has money for that? So so we're like, okay, Samson's, Judges chapter 13 through 16, and it's a good enough size, right, to say like, let's jump in the pool and take this on, because it'd be great to eventually do a David story, kind of like Game of Thrones. I think that would be fantastic. But I was like, that's a whole, like, chewing off a whole thing to do that. So so now that we've got the full story of Samson done, um, it's a little tough because you're like, oh, these next projects, like, I'm ready to dive into the creative process with those. So we're hoping to do a Joseph story next, and then we've got we'll probably do a single issue on the story of Jesus when he's 12 and he goes to the temple, or when he's young and he goes to the temple. So we've got some commission art coming in the coming weeks for those.
Okay.
So with the Kickstarter, because like I mentioned, we've got the books ready. So it's a sense like you're kickstarting our Rooted Chronicle Studios to be able to do more stories, right? Like, you can see that we can do it, right? My kids are now teenagers, so they you know they don't want to spend a whole lot of time with me. They will, but I have a lot
Uh,
more free time.
no, and that's where I'm hitting too. It's just like, my 15-year-old is no longer my sidekick, and I've got to like conform to her schedule. So it's not like,
Yeah, you're like, can I get on your schedule, please? Can
it's
we
like,
hang out? They're
can
like,
we
maybe.
please watch this next episode of the show we've been waiting like 6 months for? It's like the first time it was like, look, I don't have time to watch this new Star Wars thing with you. And I'm like just heartbroken.
Dear
Um
diary, today was awful.
that's what it was. It's how it is. Um so with doing this, um, why Samson?
Yeah, so it really sparks from um, taking a look at the story. I think there's definitely an element of, if you grew up in the church, or if you start going to church, or you just start learning the Bible, especially mostly at a young age, you're going to get the Sunday school version of stories. So, and that's good. That's proper. Noah, David, you're just going to get a little clip of it. Same thing with Samson. You're just going to get a little blurb. When you look at the full story, you're like any of them, you're like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of depth here. I think with like all scripture, like if you start digging and mining, like you're just going to keep finding treasure, right? So studying it, and I'm like, this is a really dramatic, exciting story, and a sense of like, why didn't I know more about this? Like, so one of the things is, in that Sunday school version, Samson's always portrayed as like, he's just dumb, right? He's like a dumb bodybuilder. Like, what a fool. He had superpowers and he lost them. And so
He's an
we,
idiot that is
yeah,
weak against women and
right,
like was
right,
like, this dude's not a hero. This dude's like
right,
some idiot jock.
right. So you can hear, young boys are being told like, watch out for women. See what they did to Samson, right? Like, uh,
It's hard out here in the streets.
it's,
And,
it's it's like a mother's tool for her young sons, right?
and dude, like realistically, and I really love the book, like the whole thing through. But like when I first got my hand on, I was like, Samson. I'm like, ew. And I'm like, I don't. So
Exactly.
I was like, what am I gonna? What is this? He's like, oh no, that lady's too pretty for me to make a good life choice.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, I honestly felt like in reading, especially your telling of it, I was like, I felt like I gained a lot from it, like in terms of
Mhm.
like having a better perception of the entire story. Like, um, I feel like this was the like if I was to have the one blurb promotion
Mm.
review of your stuff, it would be like you actually made me care about this person that I'd always written off as a stereotype.
Mm,
And I was like,
that's
and have empathy for someone that I just had blown off like my entire
yeah,
spiritual career. Um,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, well done.
Oh, thank you. That's oh man, I suck those words in. And honestly, that was by hopefully the intention, right? Because we just approached it that way, like kind of like if you cut pieces of the story, you're going to change the story. So if you're like, hey, Hector did this, but you don't tell me that he also did a few other things, you're like, wow, I can't believe that Hector did that. Like, well, hear the whole thing first. And also in Hebrews, they mention Samson in like the Hall of Faith, right? So we approached it like, okay, let's approach this story as Samson's actually the hero, right? Like if he made it into the Hall of Faith, even if you don't like him, like if you're like, I don't like Charles Barkley, well, he's in the Hall of Fame. So there's some reason that he did that, right?
Yeah.
So if you kind of reapproached it, okay, let's see it through the lens of he's the hero. Let's see it through the lens of um, I'm putting my world onto his. Like if I lived in the more ancient, brutal world, and someone from today was like, why are you so violent? And I'm like, I live in a violent world. Like I don't have a choice. Like it's kill or be killed, right? So if I'm not like, oh, this guy, he's just doing whatever.
It's like you mentioned
And
Game
then
of
also to
Thrones.
not make
You
him like a bodybuilder, right? To say like, hey, his strength comes from God, right? So it ties in more with Delilah asking him like, what's your strength, right? Because it's not from just you
he didn't have magic hair.
being big,
The
right?
hair was just a sign
So
of the commitment. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So for you saying that, like that's to me was the goal to say like, hey, let's look again at this story because you probably don't remember it or you have this vision of it, and it's a story of like there's ancient art of Samson, like it's been going for generations, right? So we kind of pick up the torch of the other generations to tell the story.
Um, with that, like I know that you were making sure that you told a more full version of the story, but also because you this is your writing, you had to uh create stuff beyond just what we have in scripture. So,
Hmm.
like, what was your research process for that? What were some details that you added that are just like extra, but you feel are really confident about?
That's a great question. Yeah, I kind of approached it as the Bible story is the skeleton. Like we're just basically gonna like flesh it out without trying to overdo the skeleton, right? We really wanted to hold the biblical story with that kind of care and say everything in the skeleton is here, right? Like so, if you go read the account in the Bible, you're going to feel like this is exactly what I read. Okay, so then there are elements, right? Like when because they're just. I think it's also a very good spiritual practice. Like you read like Samson got married, right? And you're like, Samson got married, right? But then if you pause and you're like, okay, let's picture a wedding scene. Let's picture a young man, like young love, head over heels, right? And it seemed to me that Samson's like, uh, he basically got betrayed. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go do these things. Like, people betray me, then there's, response or things like that, right? It didn't feel like he did something actively to kind of deserve his fate,
And I think
right? So if you're like, what's your crime? Like, I loved and trusted somebody. Like, oh, okay, that was your crime.
yeah. And I think that's one of been the things that like, the average not comic reader in the church has been getting a lot lately out of The Chosen has been like something
Absolutely.
that's just kind of filling in like, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, I never
Yeah.
thought of that. I never thought of the
Hmm.
context. And I think
Yeah.
anything The Chosen has done really well has been giving people more context to actually think about the surroundings and the logistics
Hmm.
and the stuff of getting stuff from point A to point B and laundry and brushing your teeth. They're like, someone
Right.
like, why is he
Right.
brushing it? Oh, I guess they did have to brush like that kind of stuff.
That's right. Like,
I
let's humanize it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the things that, reading this book as a whole unit, I felt like what The Chosen did for the story of the disciples, I feel like you've done for Samson in this capacity of that, like, it filled
Mhm.
in stuff to where I actually saw it as a bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, man. Yeah, that's great. I similarly like watching The Chosen, just feel blessed. Like, oh man, this has just resonated with this. Um, almost like God interacting with these people, right?
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, so now that it's all together, we're gonna put it on Kickstarter at the end of the month. Um, and like I mentioned to you, the books are ready, so you won't have to wait. We decided to do Kickstarter so that we could just offer rewards, right? Hey, we
yeah,
want to have fun on the launch. We want to be able to offer different things. And that seemed like the easiest platform then to just build it ourselves.
yeah,
So, we've got like we did 1,000 first edition print run, and again, we're just trying to have fun with it, right? So, um, we've got a signature page, so like there's a slot for me to sign it, and then there's slots for different members of the creative team. The penciler, this penciler, this penciler, because we've had a couple different artists and colorists, and if you find them, you can get them to sign their slot. And then if you get like 5 or more signatures, you can send us a picture and we'll send you like, something really cool, like piece of original art or something really cool.
an
So
actual strand of Samson's hair. Yes.
that's right. I'll need your hair for that. It's coming from you.
Um,
And then I don't know if you did the QR codes because you got an advanced copy.
yeah,
Did you see those in there? So
I'm not sure if I
I
did.
feel like
That doesn't mean they're not there. I just don't know if like, because I'm at the point in life where like I see a QR code and just kind of like, okay, that's a thing, and
mhm.
just keep going. But yeah, tell me
Yeah,
about the
so
QR codes.
so the QR code is they're before the beginning of each
Oh,
chapter.
yeah, sweet. I see that, like with the scripture reference.
Yeah, well, the one has the scripture, but the other ones in front of the chapters are for like soundtrack music. So
What?
if you click on it, it'll go to YouTube, and so you can kind of listen because I mean soundtracks are the best. Um, so the QR code will play a song. It doesn't have words, so you can read and not get distracted. And I've actually have it so like we can change the songs. So I feel like we'll keep trying to improve them, and DJ Hector can give me some.
That's a really dope concept. I think the first time I saw a book with a soundtrack was Donald Miller's Scary Close. Came
Oh,
with
I
a
don't know
link.
that one.
Oh, dude, that's a life-changing book for me. Like,
Yeah.
hands down, I reread that book every 3 years just to kind of
Wow.
balance myself.
All right, you
Um,
got to put it in the link so we can get it.
yeah, but it's just it's a book about being taking down your walls and the image you put on for other people and actually seeing yourself for who you are, and also
Nice.
your relationship with God, and just dude, it's so good. But
So I had music to it as well, like
yeah,
for you just while you read the whole thing.
yeah, it had, but and it was also thematic to the chapters and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and
that's how
so
ours are.
I absolutely stole that concept, and like
Nice, of course.
for Faith and Fandom book 3, it had a free album like in the back of it, and I was like,
Excellent.
and that was a lot of work, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this again. So, I did it, and the site that actually hosted it is gone now, so like the link is dead.
Yeah,
Um, but that's just been a neat thing of seeing like where some other artists are with that. But no, a soundtrack too, it makes a big deal when you're reading, so that's a really cool feature.
yeah.
Um,
Try that out. You read a lot of comics.
yeah,
Let's see how it is. You know what's tough about it, honestly, is people will read at different rates. So you can't just be like, and like the length of the song. You're like, how long is it going to take someone to read this chapter? Well, people are going to read differently, right? So I had like my kids and different people like, I need you to write down your times that it took you to read each chapter, and then try to get the average.
Okay. And that's the thing too of like actually having a blocked out enough time where you can actually sit and focus on a whole book at once is like it's a
Mm,
harder thing. But but having the
yeah,
access to it, that's a really cool feature. I dig that. Um,
yeah. So that'll be in the new printings. What else do we have with them? We got some additional art. I'm forgetting something. I don't want to spoil all the rewards.
oh right,
Oh,
right, right.
they're so like I said, they're all numbered, so it'll be like 1 to 1,000 for sprinting, and then kind of, hey everybody, we're celebrating, we're done. We hope to tell. We're going to be telling more stories. Um, we'll try to like get into some distributors and stores afterwards.
Right.
Um, but I so like um yeah, it's tough, man. The Like I mentioned, when you have free time, you just prefer to do your fun or creative things, and um, kind of ringing the marketing bell and social bell can feel like you're taking time away from me actually doing creative stuff, right? Like I think about if you have like a celebrity chef, and I'm like, yeah, it's great to see you on TV, but like, can you cook me something? Like this is where your skills are. Like, get back in the kitchen.
Well, and I find too, it's a lot easier for me sometimes to go the extra mile for stuff for other people's stuff, but not mine.
Mm.
Like because
Oh yeah.
so like one of the things that working with the church, that's my day job is, I do social media and graphics and stuff for church. And I'm like, okay, I'm writing sermons half the week and then it's like now go do all this stuff. I'm like, fine, whatever.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but I study a lot of analytics and see like what the most successful things are with our socials and stuff, like how to improve
Excellent.
that. And one of the things is that real like this being on Facebook Live right now, and for y'all are
Mm.
listening or watching this later, it's also on Facebook Live. This being on Facebook Live right now dramatically increases its reach just for future
Wow.
things. Um,
Nice.
uh, but it would do better if we were going just through Facebook Live instead of through Zoom to
Oh,
Facebook
really?
Live. Yeah. And it's like
Ah.
one of those things. But then also uh a 1 minute clip, any of this on a 1 minute clip will have a greater
Mhm.
reach than showing this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
chop it up
to
for
chop it up and just put it on reels, put it on the different platforms like that. And for me on a church level, I spend a week writing a sermon.
yeah.
Our entire pastoral staff goes over the sermon, reviews it, chunks it up, chews it up, makes edits, does stuff like that. I'll preach it 2 times on Sunday. And then by the time I've done that, I don't want to hear it anymore. Like I'm done. And it's like and I'll be like, that one thing we said, that's a banger. That one should be on social media. But I give
Yeah.
zero poops. I'm not
Somebody else do that.
let somebody else do that. And like, and we've got someone on our pastoral staff that they take the responsibility to make sure the whole thing gets to
Mhm.
YouTube and Facebook and our podcast channel and all that stuff. And like they do that, but also it's just like, I don't love this enough to actually sit down
Yeah.
and do the
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
the minutia of it. And it can be really hard to do that. Like,
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah,
see.
that's a good point. And I don't even like my skills at even editing is suspect. So I'd be like, how long this is gonna take me? I try to get my kids to do it. They all know how. Like, hey man, can you cut this up for me? I'll throw you a few bucks. Like I said, they don't care. They're like, no. Like, don't you need money? Yeah, but I'm not gonna do any work for you. Like, all right. They're
That's just
not that bad, but they're like,
no.
I'm busy.
It feels that way. It's just like just trying to get like because I always mow our yard and I'm like, can I get y'all to weed eat? Kid, please. Like, can you do that? I'll pay you $5 along with all the other things I feed you. Just whatever. Um,
Exactly.
but so one of the things I thought was kind of neat. Also, I thought the writing was great, and you said that you've mentioned you had a variety of artists and people that worked on it through all there. Would you feel like there's any artistic style that this kind of mirrors or
Mm,
reflects? Like, there's some stuff in here because also I'm gonna hit this in a second, but like, this has been a decade long process or more for you to get to this point, and like I feel like you can definitely see some of the artistic shift through the time.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I feel like it had like a kind of strong uh image to Wildstorm era, like late 90s, mid
Mm,
2000s vibe, kind of had like some of that strong artistic style. But is there any style you feel like it kind of encompasses or kind of
mm.
you know shows reflection of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think honestly, I'm not sure if I would know the name of this style. Once we started, our volume one artist is phenomenal, and once he couldn't continue on the project, it, we were like stalled and looking for another artist. And one of the great things about this journey has been meeting people in this sphere, meeting you, meeting people at the cons, meeting people that, like it just has made life like have this fuller element in doing that. Like this is fun. If I hadn't gotten into writing this comic, I would have missed this whole sphere. So, you start meeting other artists and then you're kind of like, hey, will you do will you do a part? And drawing your style just like he should look how he looked in the other one, right? So you can see that in volume two at the beginning, and then we had Eric finish the rest of the art, except for like the gate story. So again, meeting different artists and saying like, hey, I think it kind of helped. It kind of ended up helping the story because as it kind of moved along in time, the art would kind of change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that some of you know, the story looked great all across the board, regardless of which artist was doing it. But I liked some of the creative choices in terms of like how you showed some things, like in
Mm,
terms of the power, like the angel, like
yeah.
the angel visuals. The flaming angel was like, oh snap! I was like,
Yeah.
I was, I think I read it the first time, and I was in the middle of like a long read day of like putting stuff in for the podcast, and like I flipped the page, and I was like, am I reading Fantastic Four? What is this? Hold on. And I saw the angel and I was like, I was like, oh, that's a dope thing. And then there you get to the point where like Samson's moving at like the high speed and the kind of lightning
Mhm.
visual was like, oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate this. Like, it's
Yeah.
like it's not too far. But it also kind of like says, all right, there's more than just a dude running through a field here. That's like there's more
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
like
I think that's we're in a visual medium, right? So we're like, it should look great. Like, what's the point if it looks like awful? And you take your influences, Dragon Ball Z, and you're like, hey, I'm into this. Let's throw
the
some of this in the stew and let's mix it up and let's put a little of this.
when he's running through the field and he had the blue hair, um like I was like, look, it's Ultra Instinct Samson. Eh,
Shh.
yeah.
Uh, uh, so so yeah, it honestly took some time to feel like you were mentioning we were at the panel together.
Mhm.
I feel like that I'm sitting there having the same experience. I'm like, I just put out my little thing. Like, I can't believe that I'm here. You guys got me on the table on the stage. like that type of experience. Like, I guess I'm doing some things right if I'm up here.
Yeah.
So,
And to say that
but
to
feel like you're then like can grow into being comfortable in your shoes in a sense where I felt like, hey, think of it as like uh you know what you're gonna get with a Tarantino film. You're gonna know what you're gonna get with a Scorsese film. You know what you're gonna get with like this person, this is their flair. They're gonna put their themselves into it, and I feel like do the same. Like I want to do a Samson story. I'm gonna do it the way I'm gonna put my taste on it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some other stories, and at the back of the Samson book, there was a page for Gideon. Is that coming? Is that on the
Yeah.
list?
So Gideon's funny. So Gideon came about that there was a comic book writing contest that Kingstone helped put on, and it was both art and writing, and you were supposed to write like a 8 or 12 page script for the writing contest. So I sent one in. I ended up winning, um, and the artist who won, his name is Mike Aubon. So a few years while we were in after Volume One in that gap, I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, you had awesome art on this Gideon, and I wrote this script. Like, let's will you illustrate this script?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I was like, "All right, let me get the script out," and I, pull it up, and I'm reading it. I'm like, "This is awful. Who wrote this? How did this win anything?" So ran some edits. I don't think it was totally awful. So we just illustrated that. So that's why it's like a mini story. I think it's 8 or so pages, just introducing Gideon. There's also the tie-in that we see the same angel from Samson appear.
Okay.
Gets the sacrifice, goes up through the flame, right? So that's kind of the angel of the Lord that kind of pops in and out of stories. Um, so we thought this is cool. We're tying in with that same character, kind of doing something very similar.
All right.
So, I think that it's a great story. I would love to continue to do it. It was almost like, hey, this is a pitch if somebody wants to fund the rest of this.
And that's the hard part is like getting the people to like it. I feel like sometimes you only have so much of your own self promotion within you. And then after that, you're
Yeah.
just like, I can't do this.
I need some hype man because anybody. Okay.
I get
Yeah.
my friends have heard me say, yeah, I'm done writing like every year for like the last decade. And like they're like, I thought you were done. I was like, eh. Um, so on that note, you've been at this for a decade. Um, and like that's a hard process for people to commit to anything for
Mhm.
that long of a period without was there discouragement in any of the waiting? Do you feel like the time span helped, hurt? Like what was
Mm,
that process for you?
good question. Honestly, I think that the time span. So even in the first volume, um, what one of the main things that I learned was how it's a process. Like if you're gonna grow a tree, like it's gonna take time, and to make a creative product or make something creative is a process. And like a tree, a lot of times you have limited control on how fast it goes. Like we were talking about, like, hey man, my artists have lives, you know. They're someone they know gets sick, they have other things, they have kids, like, okay, so we can't stress out over the process. So I still did feel it's still a long time, but it helped in the sense that like I was able to continue to uh, read more comics, um, and just I feel like improve my comic writing. If you do something once versus you did it 3 4 times, you're gonna feel like I'm a little better at this than I was the first time, right? And I can feel a little bit of like, oh, I'm putting out a product where I'm just learning, so I know I'm not as strong as I want to be. But you can see, I feel like you can see like the story might flow a little better as you go along in it, right? Like, okay, this is a little smoother or is smoother. So I think the time helped. It also just taught to say like, hey, a little bit every day adds up, right? And I didn't do it every day. I didn't write every day. I didn't work on it every day. We kind of did it in segments when it's like, okay, this artist is working. right? We need to get script, and we have lettering. We're working on that now. Um, putting it together, colors, um, and so you're also learning those things, and to be comfortable to say like, hey, can we modify these colors? Hey, can we change this page a little bit? Um, just collaborating, right? Getting better at collaborating. Um, because when I first started, I felt like I know so little. Like you guys have to hold my hand, and uh, you know, raise up my level in the collaboration as well. That's the great thing about collaborating is getting that page and seeing them do it better. Having the colors come in and you're like that page where it flames up. Can you imagine like getting the pencils and then you're getting the colors and you're like, this is so like I wrote this. And then the angel goes up in the flame and you came up with this. Like, wow, right? Like you made this far better than I could have even imagined. So that collaborating element is like um almost like hitting a home run in comics, just enjoying that.
Because you tell a story that obviously has, some violent tones to it. Um, was there any part that you feel like, what, this I can't show this, or we can't write this is too far, or like,
Mm.
because I gotta say, like the lion's jaw getting ripped off, like I was like, oh, it's that kind of party. All right. I was like, all right, here, I'm here for this. All right, let's go. I was like, yeah, no shade intended. I was like, this isn't Lifeway approved. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, so that just felt like the story needed that, and that was just our flavor and who we're gonna reach. Like, hey, we have this. We almost are like we're gonna go in this small lane, and then we're not gonna be part of anything, right? Like, we're not two, and we're not, and we're two at the same time. But we hope we're like kind of balanced. So for me, there was an element of Samson's like, if Superman killed, you're like, yeah, that would be rough, right? Or they've seen The Boys or something, right? Like, hey, I live in a violent world, and it's just gonna go down, and you're like, all right, well, let's flow with that. Like, we're gonna go for an audience that isn't in Sunday school, right? So I think we can handle it. Um, and it was funny. I was having a conversation with another publisher, and they were saying like when they are out, they've never had problems with like their books having violence. They're like it's just more the sexual content, and they're like, and we don't even have sexual content. We have like one page. They're like somebody ripped us. We're like, whoa, whoa. So same thing. There's our elements.
there's some aggressive snuggling. That's about it.
Exactly like I feel um like you see worse when you go to Target. Hopefully, like at the checkout line, like it's worse than what's in my book.
Yeah.
I think by far, like or wherever you look, like ours is, like you said, like the old school TV where you're like, oh, they're doing something, but you
Fade to
don't really.
black.
It's a flag. Exactly.
Oh. Um, so let's say, this has been a 10-year journey with this one, and you've got some stuff in the pipeline. Where would you want to see Rooted in 10 years?
Oh, at the Oscars, Best Picture Animation. That
Okay.
sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Um, I think we could do a short animation, right? They give Oscars for that,
They do.
5 minutes or so, 5 10 minutes. Um, yeah, I think we just want to keep telling stories that are like you mentioned, like, oh, I took another look at this, and the story had more depth and complexity than I thought, and I appreciate that, right? Like it's now memorable, like The Chosen, right? Whereas before it was kind of glossed over. So would love to. We've got the Joseph story. We could do the Gideon story. A couple other stories, but to hopefully have a studio. Man, I really want to write Batman and Superman. Like, I don't need to do a whole lot of runs, but like, let me tell a couple stories.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
I've gotten one paycheck from DC Comics, and I was like, this is probably as good as it gets.
Wow.
But it was for
Uh,
just it was just being a background
I
actor in
don't care
Swamp
how
Thing.
much it is.
I was like, I
It
got it.
just
And like the first thing I was like, I saw the DC official envelope, and I'm like, they're suing me for something. And I'm like, and I was like, oh wait, I was on their team.
dread.
It was like literally that, like I needed to sit down, I need to prepare for my life to be over, and then I was like, oh, that's a paycheck. Watch out. But it wasn't for writing, so I'm like, okay, whatever. I wanna do something where I get to write. But no, I feel that that's a hmm. um.
Yeah.
So heading into the Kickstarter, your Kickstarter is launching on the 31st of May.
Mhm.
Right? And
Yep.
like you said you're just gonna be a handful of rewards for it, and the books are done, so there won't be a wait. What's gonna be the turnaround? Like somebody
Yeah.
pledges it,
So
what's the turnaround?
yeah, so the campaign will run at I think the most 3 weeks. So once the campaign ends, then we'll ship them out. They'll be ready. I mean, I'll have to sign them, um, and if there are other rewards, put those in. I'm gonna have my kids assembly line workers, uh, putting postage on and stuff. So yeah, I think I would say maybe 2 weeks for shipping out, but it'll kind of be as they go, right? You
Right.
ship out some, you ship out another, right? So see how fast I can get these kids to work. I mean, they might not want to spend as much time with us, but they eat more, so the cost of them somehow goes up.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. And like the Kickstarter's not up yet. I know it's is there anywhere they can
No, it's
do a
not up
preview?
yet. Honestly, yeah, no, I don't. That's on the to-do list today. Put some time in on that. So yeah, so we'll start floating the link once it's up. Just want to we'll approach it as, hey guys, we're celebrating. We got this book. We're gonna do a book release launch party. Um, come have fun. We're gonna be doing this Samson challenge as part of it, which we'll start releasing info on that. But that's gonna be a fun element. And then we're have some art that's being commissioned. So to show that new art as it comes out, we might do some prints of it, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Um,
Make some
but
stickers, some
it'll
prints.
show it'll show like where we're like we're having one done of the Joseph story we want to tell, and the other stories we want to tell, and some other Samson art done.
Get a sticker of the lion's jaw flying through the air.
I know, right?
That's what I'm here for. Um, so I know that Samson the Nazarite has a Facebook page. Can they find your stuff on any other social platforms, or where should they look to, like, if they want to do some more research or check out what you've
Yeah,
got going on with Rooted?
yeah. So now that so we did 3 volumes of Samson that told the whole story. Now we put them all together with the Gideon with art. So it's one big graphic novel. It's like 175, 6 pages. Um, so now we kind of changed the name that it's all together slightly, right? So now it's the story of Samson the
Okay.
Nazarite. So because now it's all in one, we got the full story.
Right.
So you can find us at samsoncomic.com. You'll be able to find us at samsonstory.com. We got a Facebook page. I think the samsonstory.com domain is having issues, but if you do Samson Comic, the story of Samson, anything Samson you put into the web browser will probably should come up with our website. If it doesn't, we have to hire Hector for our analytics. So yeah, so we're just kind of letting people know, hey, we got the Kickstarter in a couple weeks. Come have fun. Come check out the rewards, and then hopefully we can dart that line and get in some Lifeway stuff. We'll see.
And if you are checking, like, I'm got a few weeks off, but I'm going to be doing, my summer con tour schedule. And if you come find me at any of the shows, I'll have some of the volume ones of Samson, and we can talk. We'll hook you up
Yeah,
with some
yeah,
of those. You can come see me at Heroes Con, Galaxy Con, any of the shows in between, and do that. There's I was gonna tell you, I've got a I think I may have mentioned it even when we were talking. There's a children's and teens like mothers organization that's actually wanting to get in touch about using that for like, curriculum and rewards for
Oh,
all their students and stuff. So
great.
yeah, that's pretty cool. I've got a
Fantastic.
meeting with them next week. Um
Awesome.
they wanted to meet this.
My in-laws have your books because we got some of your books.
Yeah.
And, they're obviously a little older, and I'm like, "You guys reading this?" They're like, "Yeah, that's good." I'm like, "All right, great."
I normally don't do church events with my books like ever. Just because I know my audience and and but I was going to be going to a church planters conference last week, and I was like, they had vendors at this thing last year,
Mm,
and Faith and Fandom does make good youth and college age curriculum and stuff like that. And I was like, and I said I hit up the dude running. I was like, look, dude, can I set my stuff up? I know it's not your, that's not, I know it's not like a
mhm,
church planter manual or anything, but it's like, I'll set it up that you can read all the chapters for free online. He's like, yeah, and it was just like one of those things of like being at a church planter conference with Faith and Fandom's booth set up. I was like, this is why I go to Comic Cons. Like, it's just
mm,
like I was like, I know my audience, and like,
mhm.
what's really funny is I feel like I got more awkward looks at the church planner conference than I do at the con. And I'm grateful to have been. It was a good opportunity, but like, I was just like, okay, you know what? I'll take this in stride. Um,
We tested the waters here. This isn't where the fish are for us. Yeah.
no, this is not my people. Um, yeah, it's like, it's the thing with Marty McFly and Back to the Future. You know, but your kids will love it. Yeah,
That's right.
I feel like that's what's happening.
Hey,
Um,
if you can feel like Marty McFly, you're doing all right. It's
I've got
good.
a somewhere back there and all my apparel stuff. I've got an autographed hoverboard from the guy who wrote Back to the Future. It's pretty cool.
Oh man, awesome.
Yeah, it was
All
pretty
right,
neat.
so we were supposed to talk Guardians
All
too.
right, before we wrap this up, you said you're disappointed in Guardian, so like I need to hear this.
Okay, so a little bit of backstory. I feel like I can get disappointed at movies on the first watching just because of whatever expectations are.
Yeah,
So I've been trying not to watch trailers because then it can I just want to go into it, like versus how before where you're kind of the person obsessing over the trailer and I'm like, okay, it can just set expectations of what's to come. So for me, so going into it, I felt like coming back and reflecting, I felt like the villain wasn't strong enough. He wasn't like relatable enough. He was just like a monster at all times. And uh, we took out Rocket from most of the movie as Rocket, grown Rocket, and I feel like he's one of the strongest characters. Like I wanted to see Rocket in the movie, not like
not backstory Rocket.
no, but I can have backstory Rocket as long as I have current Rocket too, right? Like he's gonna be the playing off everybody, having action, making joke. You know what I mean? Like so, I felt like so we don't get Rocket, and then we don't have strong enough villains. So I feel like that was where my disappointment lied in that I felt like those elements were weaker.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely feel the lack of his presence throughout the whole thing with it. And I
Which I think
appreciate.
is part of it, right? They're feeling his lack, that he's not there and they care for him. But yeah, we could have seen some teenage Rocket with other Groot.
Yeah, but I think they were trying to play off the puppy-eyed or like sad puppy eyes, and like
I'm not saying I didn't cry during Guardians. I'm not saying that.
no, but I'm just saying I think they were more concerned about giving us that, the sad puppy eyes. And one of the interesting things that I saw was an interview with James Gunn recently was the F bomb that's in there. Like
Mm,
that was not scripted,
mm,
and that was just like on the whatever take. Uh
mhm.
he said it and he's like, "Oh no, I like that. Leave that in there." And
Nice.
so James Gunn went to Kevin Feige and he's like, "Are you going to make me take that out?" And Kevin Feige said the at one point in time during Civil War there was an F bomb. in Civil War. And
Oh,
and
oh wow.
so that Kevin Feige told James Gunn the same thing he told the Russos. He said, "I'll let you have it, but is that what you want your legacy to be?" And
Mm,
so the Russos said no, and James Gunn said absolutely. Like it's like he knew like this was him not burning his bridges, but he was saying like I'm gonna go ahead and do everything I want before I leave.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like he's like, I do
Yeah.
want that to be my legacy. So like on that note, to segue and wrap it all up, when all is said and done with the, not that you're going to be bound by this one project because I think we're all bigger than just what we do
Mm,
with our, creative and ministerial projects. But like, what do you want the legacy of Rooted and Samson to be down the road?
mm. Another great question. So there's an element that I see where um, art and Christian art, there's just a long history of mankind carrying on with art and the arts. And what we have now stands on the shoulders of what came before us. And there's a sense of like, it's our time to contribute to the river of art that's going to continue. So I hope to have stories that inspire now and in the future creatives that also stand the test of time, that someone could say like, oh, that's still on my shelf, like that's still good after 20 years, 40 years, like you can still go to it and enjoy the story and feel, like you said, feel the story. And so if we can do more stories like that, I mean, that would be amazing.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we wrap out and roll out?
Let's take a quick peek at that picture. I don't know if you can show it.
I,
Did you get the
you
one I
know,
sent you?
ooh, yeah, 1 second. Like, I don't know that I've ever shown a picture on Zoom because
I
so I'm not that cool.
don't know if I
Um,
can either. Well, if we can, then we can.
yeah, yeah. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Well, we're gonna post it up. Um, my oldest son wants to write and draw stories. He's freshman in college, but that's his passion. And so I was like, "Hey, man, let's do a commission together." And so we worked on it, which was so much fun. Um, over a few days, just talking about the ideas, looking at things. Again, the collaborative process um, can just be so enjoyable, and to do it with him was just special. So yeah, so we're gonna put it up for Rooted Chronicle. It's a little bit of like, hey, this is what we do. We tell stories, and a little bit of like, we just want to be in the lab, in the kitchen, making stories. Um, and kind of visualizing that creative process. So we're going to put it on Rudy Chronicles page and places of just, hey, we're here to make art to continue. Um, and I think it's just a fun, cool piece.
It is a cool piece. And if I fail at life and don't get this up there right now, then I'm gonna post it on the Faith and Fandom page, and we'll also make it where you can see it when everything's shown at the end. So yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
we'll
think I've got
post it
that
up too.
set up for my privacy settings, and I am trying to share
Oh,
my
that's
screen.
okay.
And
That was a last minute
no, you're good, but I should have
throw
when you
in.
said it, I didn't like fully process. I'm like, oh, I actually have to do something to make this happen. Um, but yeah, yeah.
Before you go, what are you still working on that other comic book, or just doing more for the? I know you said
So
you kind of taking a break.
yeah, I've got a con break, and I'm at a not a standstill or anything, but so I've got, let's say, 8 or 9 chapters written for the next full
Wow.
Faith and Fandom book. But I'm also not rushing. Like,
Yeah.
um, um, and a lot of the stuff that I've felt encouraged or inspired by lately isn't your mainstream nerd stuff. And so I'm
Mm.
still writing about it, but it's like, bro, nobody cares about the story. Like, um,
I care.
um, so like, I mean, it's real eclectic. Like, one of the Academy Award nominee movies for the year was The Banshees of Inisherin,
Mm.
which is
I
like,
didn't see it, but
yeah, no one did. Um, but it's a drama about two Irishmen who lose their friendship, and just it's like an over the top, very like emotionally heavy thing. And so like I was real sad about losing some friends like back in
mm.
February, and I was like, and I watched that movie and I was like, I wrote a whole devotional on. I was like, dude, nobody saw this movie, nobody cares.
Is
Or
that the one with Colin was in it?
yes,
And
yeah, Colin
yeah,
Farrell.
yeah, yeah. I've been
And
okay.
it's just literally one dude decides, you know what, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And the other dude can't handle it. He's like, but
Mm.
we've always been friends. You're my best friend. He's like, you can't not like me. And like, and it gets dramatic and dark. Like,
Oh, I gotta
um,
check it out. You
it's, I
gotta
mean,
tell those stories, man. If you're passionate about it, like,
but it's like there was a, uh, because not everybody watches Apple TV because it's the same way. Like I try and recommend Ted Lasso and people are like, I don't have Apple. I'm like, I didn't either. Um,
yeah, and you
but
should get it just for that.
yeah, you should. But like there's the Christmas movie Spirited with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell.
Hmm.
And I was like, I
Yeah.
did one on that, and they're like, I was like, I know right now the stuff that I'm actually wanting to write is not
Yeah.
batting for the mainstream audience. I was like, I was making notes of like stuff that I'm interested in writing. Like I want to write about like the musical Rent and Jonathan
Yeah.
Larson's story and stuff like. So it's just like, eh. But one thing that is about to come out is each week I do a 3-minute devotional for um Love Thy Nerd Radio.
Okay.
Like it's that thing, like there'll be music playing and then they'll be like, hey, it's Hector and here's a quick Bible, like a little
Mm.
nerdy Bible story that pops up. I've done that for several years now, and I'm
Oh,
probably up to like 160 of those.
wow.
And so I transcribed and edited and put the first 101 of them in a devotional book.
Oh,
Um,
great.
and so like, because I've gotten really long-winded in my writing anyway. So like I know me, and I know I can fully say, I would get bored reading this. But so it's going to be called like Faith and Fandom Bite Size or Faith and Fandom Fun Size, one or the other. I was going with Bite
Oh, I
Size,
like
and I was
that.
going to make it like look like it was in a bowl of cereal.
Mhm.
But then the editor sent me a message yesterday or the day before. She's like, "These are just so great. They're like Sour Patch Kids for spiritual growth." And I'm like,
Mm.
and I was like, maybe I could do a candy wrapper thing and call it like fun size.
Yeah,
But like
fun
either way,
size.
there's gonna be 101 mini devotionals, and that's coming. I've got 2 comic books in the work. Um, I've written one is the
Nice.
awkward church story one, and like the art for that is really good. I'm really excited about it. And the other one is just a stupid slice of life, fun superhero comic book of uh and it's just dumb ideas that came out of the pandemic, but like of a supervillain and a superhero meeting on TikTok, um and like forming a relationship, but they don't know that they're superhero and villain because they're trying to keep
Oh
their
my,
secret identities. And so
oh my God.
like, and then the supervillain relocates to the superhero's city because of some heat,
Mm.
and then they're like tap dancing around each other. And like I wrote this whole story out, wrote the whole script, and I sent it to an artist, and uh the work is great. It looks phenomenal from what I've
Oh,
seen.
great.
And then all of the artist's stuff got stolen. Like they got robbed. Like like the whole Mac, the pencils, the art, the everything. And like,
Oh,
and so
awful.
all I've got currently is like the pictures of like the rough draft stuff that was sent over Messenger. And I'm
Yeah.
like, and so,
Oh,
and like that's
how demoralizing.
oh, it's I read was Bob Goff had a book, Everybody Always.
Mhm.
Just really good, encouraging spiritual book. He had to write the book twice because he wrote the whole book, had it ready to send to the publisher, and it was in his laptop, and like while he was doing ministry in a third world country, and his laptop got stolen, and so he had to write the entire book again. And
Oh,
I'm
maybe
like,
I have the fortitude to do that.
and that's what I was about to say. Like, I personally, if I lost a whole book I wrote, y'all just ain't getting that book. Like,
Yeah, it wasn't meant for the world.
peace out. The Lord needed to work that out for y'all because you ain't getting it. So that's kind of like what's on the table for me. Just
Well, man, you got to do that stuff, man. Even if you don't feel people are going to read it, like if you're doing it on the musicals and all that, like that's great, man. And
and,
it's all content, right? And you'll find an audience for it, and people will find it.
and honestly, there's a lot of times it's just good catharsis for me. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. What
and
what what are you reading that's good?
oh man, I
I
read
guess I should
Dane.
listen to the podcast.
You talking nerd content or just normal stuff?
Both, whichever
Uh,
you think I should know about and check out.
Dangerous Jesus by KB was really good. Um,
Okay,
the rapper KB Kevin
yeah,
Burris.
I like him.
He wrote a book called Dangerous Jesus, which after reading the whole thing, honestly, a lot of it sounds like stuff I say and stuff that I think, but it's stuff that I say and think that I probably wouldn't say because I like my job. And
Mm.
and I don't want to get destroyed. Um a lot of it's fine, but he will straight swing on some people that would like
Nice.
get me kicked out. So that was really good. And Tom King's Human Target just wrapped up a couple weeks ago or a
Yeah,
couple months ago. I
that
thought
was
I really
good.
enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Um and
it was so pretty too. The book looked so good.
oh, so good. And then
Yeah.
one of the things that lately My Hero Academia made a really good uh upswing in their graphic in their manga lately.
Oh.
And like they took it, like I felt like it was just getting a little sappy and kiddie for a minute,
Mhm.
and they took such a dark turn, like
Oh.
a hard dark turn, and it's where the anime is now. And one of the crazy things is they've gotten to almost Game of Thrones level of like they've outran their
Wow.
writing as terms of
Wow.
animation. There is one manga past where the cartoon is. Like,
Wow.
and like so and but that manga came out like 2 weeks after the after the anime caught up. So there's a 2-week window
Oh.
there where they were like in sync. And
Wow.
but
That's
there's a
incredible.
yeah, and so it's like that y'all have put in work. Um but like there was this whole thing where Deku felt too much responsibility and too much weight because at that point in time all the villains have escaped from prison.
Mm.
And All for One and Shigaraki or whatever can tell where he is at all times. And so anywhere
Mm.
he is puts other people in danger. And
Mm.
so he pushes everybody away, he isolates, he becomes so overwhelmed that he's to the point of collapse, and he looks more like
Mm.
a villain than he does like a hero. And
Wow.
um and so the book they leave it like that for like 3 or 4 months in the in the manga, and then all of a sudden like his entire class shows up to stop him, and
Wow.
they're like we're going to rescue you from your burdens whether you let us or not. And
Mhm.
so they've just the whole thing of them like if we have to beat you up to bring you
Yeah.
home, we
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And like I cried in the setup and I cried in the execution. And like I was like, well done. Y'all like
Yeah.
there's a period I didn't see where it was heading. I felt like it was getting a little more Attack on Titan. But I think it's done really well. And I think if they keep this
Good.
pace, it'll end strong. So
Oh, good. Excellent. Alright, check
that's me,
that
man.
out.
All right. So
Okay.
everybody listening, everybody watching, make sure you check out Samson the Nazarites. Kickstarter will be launching on May 31st. You can check that out, and you can look up the Samson comic or the Samson story online anywhere else and find that else. And keep an eye out for all the other things that Lewis is making because he makes amazing things and does adult jobs too.
And adults well too.
He adults well too. All right. Thanks everybody.